In a war with more than its fair share of spectacular attacks, this may turn out to be the most spectacular of them all. On Sunday the 1st of June, Ukraine unleashed multiple swarms of low-cost drones to attack Russian air bases. For the next few hours, social media was alive with video feed taken from the drones themselves as they went crashing into aircraft, sending flames shooting high into the sky. Described like that, the events of Sunday sound important, but not overwhelmingly so. After all, Ukraine has hit Russian air bases before. As recent as March, a drone swarm caused a huge explosion at Engels Air Base. But what made Sunday's operation so transformative, to the extent that we feel comfortable calling it historic, are not the broad brushstrokes of the attack. Instead, it's the specifics that make this worthy not just of a special episode on this very channel, but also of academic papers and military theory lectures for decades to come. Because while Engels Base lies over 450 kilometers from Ukraine, some of the bases hit on June the 1st lie over 4,000 kilometers away. And nor was this a singular attack. It was a combined operation that saw 4 airfields hit simultaneously in different corners of the country. More to the point, it was carried out with low-cost drones smuggled into Russia inside commercial long-haul trucks, drones that activated when they neared their targets and launched a surprise attack that no one could foresee. It's this detail, more than anything, that will have war planners in Washington and Beijing lying awake at night. The now very real image of a swarm of cheap drones emerging from a hiding place near a strategic port or base before wreaking havoc. And make no mistake, what happens over the weekend to Russia could just as easily happen to China, or indeed to America. This will be the focus of the latter part of today's video. How we've entered a world in which the warnings of drone experts weren't heeded in time, in which a $600 device could take out $1 billion strategic asset, and isn't really that much we could do to stop them. First though, let's back up a little bit and explain what actually happened on Sunday. Well, the short answer is that Russia got humiliated. To quote the analyst John Helen of the Blackbird Group writing on X, it's likely that Sunday was the worst day for Russian aviation since 1941. And that's a bold claim, but it's a claim that's likely to be borne out. Now, according to Ukraine's security service, its drones hit dozens of Russian heavy bombers across airfields in Murmansk in the Arctic, Irkutsk in Siberia, as well as Ivanovo and Ryazan in western Russia. Overall, Kiev claims 41 bombers were taken out with a combined cost of $7 billion. Now, any numbers supplied by Ukraine, obviously a little bit suspect. And we should point out that no one else seems to believe that a full third of Russia's strategic bomber fleet has been wiped out. Western intelligence officials told the New York Times that they believe up to 20 craft were destroyed or severely damaged, while Andriy Kovalenko, an official with Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, claims it was more like 13. Now, at the time of writing, on Tuesday morning, we can't say for sure what the true total is. Open-source intelligence analysts using satellite imagery have counted 6 Tu-95s taken out, with another damaged, 4 Tu-22Ms, and 1 AN-12. Although it's worth pointing out that we're still waiting on imagery from other air bases, so that total could change. Indeed, it could have changed by the time you see this video. But look, even if the final count still comes in at 12 craft destroyed, that wouldn't change the fact that this will have a huge impact on Russia. These were not ordinary warplanes that Ukraine targeted, but strategic bombers that are in short supply. Here's how The Economist explains it. Russia has relatively small numbers of strategic bombers, probably fewer than 90 operational Tu-22, Tu-95, and newer Tu-160s in total. Many of the aircraft are old and no longer produced. The last Tu-22M3s and Tu-95s were made more than 30 years ago. End quote. In other words, they are literally irreplaceable. And even though Russia is manufacturing Tu-160s, the process is so time-consuming and expensive that Moscow can't just shrug and go, we were due for an upgrade anyway. This is an attack that is simply going to take years to recover from. As the founder of Frontelligence Insight noted on X, losing even 10 of these planes would be a serious blow. Now, this matters beyond the context of just the Ukraine war. These bombers aren't just designed to carry the cruise missiles raining death and destruction on Ukrainian cities. They're also intended to carry nuclear weapons, and as such, they're a part of Russia's nuclear deterrent. To quote Warzone founder Tyler Arguway writing on X, Russia just lost an unknown number of strategic aircraft that are directly tied to validity of their nuclear deterrent. The strategic nature of the effects of this attack put it into uncharted territory. were it to turn out that Western intelligence assessments are right and 20 of these craft are out of action, it would make it extremely difficult for Russia to keep using its long-range aviation to both bomb Ukraine and keep up its nuclear deterrent patrols against Europe, America, and Japan. Even the loss of just 12 would result in some really tough choices. And look, as we mentioned earlier, it's not so much what happened that makes this story so important as how it went down. And it's here where things start to get really rather ingenious. Known as Operation Spiderweb, the attack took 18 months to orchestrate. Ukraine's SBU Secret Service managed to smuggle wooden cabins into Russia with drones concealed within the roofs and have them delivered to their destinations by legitimate haulage firms whose drivers were completely unaware of their role. For those into thrilling tales of special operations, the books that will one day be written on this and the legwork of setting up legitimate seeming companies involved in building cabins is going to be pretty great. For our purposes, though, the key point is that the SBU managed to get hundreds of drones within easy distance of key Russian air bases without anybody suspecting a thing. Until the moment the cabin roofs retracted and the drones started flying, no one in any position of authority even vaguely suspected the trucks were anything other than normal traffic. And it's here that we return to our bold claim from the beginning, that this was a truly historic moment in warfare. Because if Ukraine can suddenly deploy scores of drones from a hiding place to take out vital Russian kit, then, well, so can anybody. And that is a bit of a massive problem because it's not just Russia that leaves its extremely expensive aircraft out in the open or in hangars that haven't been hardened against attack, but also America. As a recent Hudson Institute report bemoaned, that includes on US bases at strategic locations in the Pacific, bases that would be key if conflict ever erupted with China. This is the paradigm shift that we saw on Sunday. The realization that predictions of hidden drones or missiles suddenly emerging from civilian vehicles to devastate American assets are no longer the domain of overexcited futurists, but a real and present threat. Tom Shugart of the CNAS think tank conjured this eerie scenario. We'll quote him. Imagine on game day, containers at rail yards, on Chinese-owned container ships in port or offshore, on trucks parked at random properties, spewing forth thousands of drones that sally forth and at least mission kill the crown jewels of the US Air Force. Now, to be clear, this is something that military experts have been warning us about for years. To quote Tom Shugart again. A reminder, given today's Ukrainian drone strikes, that it is becoming borderline insane that we routinely allow ships owned and operated by DoD-designated Chinese military companies to sit in our ports with thousands of containers on board and under their control. Now, what makes Operation Spiderweb truly historic is that these experts have now been proven right. This is sort of in the same way that forward-thinking people could see in 1914 that tanks were the future of warfare, but it took until a series of spectacular victories in the summer of 1918 for politicians and wider society to catch up. We are now seeing the eyes of the world opened to what was once a theoretical threat, and no one knows what's going to come next. That's because the means to defend against such a threat are still in their infancy. Sure, you can jam drones, but experience on the front lines of Ukraine shows that electronic warfare is a constant arms race. There's a reason why the best defense on most of the front appears to be netting. More to the point, when small drones are so cheap, you don't have to hit $1 billion target to make an attack cost-effective, especially when you consider that such strikes may not even be the work of state-based actors. And if there are prizes for chilling sentences delivered in casual ways, then the gold might be won by retired Australian General Mick Ryan, who noted that, quoting here, "The proliferation of drones, open-source sensors, and digital command and control systems means that long-range strike is now a commodity available to almost every nation-state and non-state actor with a few $1 million and the desire to reach out and strike their adversary." The scary part there is non-state actor, a category that would include outfits like the Houthis, Hezbollah, or Al-Qaeda. And while we didn't decide to write this episode just to give you nightmares, the idea that a container full of suicide drones could one day be planted at a crowded public location by a terror group, well, that's all sorts of disconcerting, isn't it? In this sense, Operation Spiderweb may have given us a stark glimpse of the future. Not only will politicians now be racing to allocate money for the hardening of America's Pacific bases and becoming a lot more paranoid about Chinese cargo ships near sensitive ports, but we're also likely to see other actors realize the value of low-cost drone warfare. Over in Sudan, for example, the rapid support forces that are battling the army have already started using cheap drones to attack long distance. Seeing the damage Ukraine could do with inexpensive kit is likely to only inspire more insurgents and more armed groups. But rather than get into all of that, let's end today's video by stepping away from the big picture stuff and looking back at the conflict that has bred these innovations. Revolutionary as Operation Spiderweb was, its overall impact on the Ukraine war might wind up being somewhat minor. Sure, Ukrainians will get a morale boost, and Russia will get a colossal headache as it scrambles to rejig storage of its bomber fleet and harden its air bases. It'll also be stuck for the foreseeable future, with a key part of its nuclear deterrent hobbled, as well as a time-consuming and expensive need to search haulage trucks for more drones. On the front line, though, it may be that little changes. Analyst Rob Lee summed up the negative take best, writing on X: "The war has been very costly for Russia, and the costs have increased, including many embarrassing episodes, but the war continues. I'm skeptical this will significantly alter Moscow's perception of whether to continue the war, because bringing the war to Russia has not led to significant political pressure on Putin, and Ukraine is clearly very important to Putin." End quote. In this light, Spiderweb is just another moment, like the sinking of the Moskva or the blowing up of the Kerch Bridge. It's something that humiliates Russia and causes a hissy fit in the Kremlin, but it doesn't otherwise change anything. Like a spectacular pass that doesn't alter the overall direction of a football match. Certainly, the Kremlin's forces are still grinding forward in the Donbass. They're taking immense casualties, but they're also recruiting tens of thousands of fresh faces a month. While we might wish it were different, Sunday's events, they're not likely to change that. Still, that doesn't mean that the Kremlin won't be injured by Spiderweb. With its strategic bomber force hobbled and its troops bogged down in eastern Ukraine, Russia is starting to look less and less like a Tier 1 power. The fact it can't even stop a far smaller, far poorer nation from repeatedly humiliating it is going to be noticed by the world. As the founder of Frontelligence Insight wrote on X, "If Ukraine can continue to hold the line, then the ever-increasing cost of war may eventually compel the Kremlin to acknowledge a sobering reality, that continuing the war not only worsens the situation in Ukraine, but accelerates Russia's own strategic decline." And what could be a clearer marker of that decline than videos of irreplaceable bombers burning on their airfields? Billion-dollar platforms from the world's self-proclaimed second greatest army reduced to ashes by low-cost drones. Thank you for watching.